Yeah, so welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. As we mentioned, we're here to talk about our new Farmstand business curriculum, what it is, and how you can start teaching it.
Mm-hmm. And as a way of introduction, my name is Tutu. I am in the middle of transition, so I used to be the youth engagement coordinator here at Grow NYC, but next week start out as the assistant director for our food access initiatives. But when I wrote this, when we put together this curriculum, I was doing it under the youth engagement portion. So excited to be here, excited to share some of our work.
And my name is Sophia. I'm the nutrition education coordinator here at Grow NYC. And I also have been working on this Farmstand business curriculum project, and I'm super excited to get as many people on board with it as we can and be able to answer all your questions today. And on that note, if you have questions throughout, be sure to put them in the chat. We will get to all of your questions at the end of the presentation. And also, this presentation is being recorded and it will be sent around afterwards and posted on our distance learning page.
Yeah.
So we are Grow NYC. We work to protect the environment, create green spaces, help people stay healthy, and give them opportunity to make a positive impact.
And our work falls under these four big overarching programs. So we have a conservation arm, and most of that is our zero waste programs. We have a zero waste schools department that helps teach schools and kids and stakeholders within school environments about how to compost, how to recycle. But what we're mostly known for are our compost sites. So we also have food scraps collection sites where we collect food scraps, and then with the help of our partners process them into compost that we eventually give back to the community. We have green spaces that includes some of our school garden work as well as community garden work. We have our education spaces programs as well, including education out at the green markets as well as in school gardens, and we also have a teaching garden out on Governor's Island. And finally, also another thing we're known for are food access and agricultural programs. If you've been to 14th Street Union Square on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Saturday, you have definitely seen one of our farmers markets. And so we run farmers markets, but we also have food access portions of our FAA program that are farm stands and fresh food boxes, where we provide local and affordable food to folks who are in communities that don't normally have fresh fruits available to them.
Great. So in this workshop, I'm just going to go over briefly what we'll be talking about. So we'll start off with some community agreements, and these will be community agreements for this presentation, as well as a way that you can model community agreements in your classrooms or in your spaces in the future for teaching this curriculum. Then we'll discuss why Farmstand business, really what it is and why it's important. Then we'll get into the heart of the curriculum, exploring different elements of the curriculum, and round out with facilitation guide and tips. And we'll leave plenty of time, like I mentioned, for question and answer.
Great. And as Sophia said, we are using these community agreements to model what you can do with your students or with your groups, but also we want to share some of the community agreements that we found to be helpful in when we gather in spaces with folks who might not have worked with before. So the first community agreement is respect comes first. So we are extending respect to everybody in this room, and the way we've done that is actually with the next one, practicing one mic, being respectful and listening to others as they talk, knowing that they will offer the same respect and attention when we are also talking.
Then we have active listening, as well as honor intentions and acknowledge impact. So that means that you are going to honor where the intention of what someone said is coming from, but as well as acknowledging the impact, whether that might not have come across the same way as the intention was.
Yeah. And this is a brave space. So unlike safe spaces where folks can trust that everybody in that space is supportive of them, we recognize that we all are coming from different viewpoints. And so we encourage you to challenge assumptions, to stay curious, but also, again, to continue to be respectful of other folks.
We have take space, make space. So like this says, you want to take space, so use your voice, but as well as make space and realize when you have maybe been speaking. Of course, right now Tutu and I are presenting, but like we said, we're modeling these agreements for how you can describe them in your classrooms or in the spaces that you work in. So making space to make sure everyone has a chance to speak.
Yeah, especially if kind of like me, if you are normally the one who is the first to speak, the first to talk, ensuring that other folks have the same level of comfort as well to share their voice. And also, as part of a brave space, we encourage people to respond to the thoughts that folks are sharing, not to respond to the person. And also when you're responding, it's not in retaliation, but we're all here to learn. We're all here to hear from one another. So let's continue to have that that mindset as we talk and share with each other.
Take time to know and respect pronouns, and also to speak from your own experience and use I statements. And this is super important when we're talking about food access. And sometimes these topics can get a little touchy or be really impactful. And it's just really important to make sure that you're speaking from your own experience and not projecting onto others.
Yeah. Excuse me. And to the folks who just joined, this entire presentation is going to be recorded and will be made available, I think tomorrow. So if you've missed out on anything, you can catch up then. Great. So just a little bit about the curriculum overall, just what it entails. And the Farmstand business curriculum is essentially built on our model of a farm stand. So a farm stand is one of our food access initiatives, and it's basically a smaller version of our farmers markets where community members can access locally grown and produced fruits and vegetables at a price that is a lot cheaper than they would get at a farmer's market, because we get a lot of our food aggregated from our wholesale our wholesale program. So we got funding from the USDA to create a curriculum that we thought would be applicable to youth in high school, because a lot of our work was resonating with K through 3. That was who mostly comes to the farmers markets. That's who's mostly interested and invested in the school gardens. So we wanted to make sure that we were providing education and resources for folks at all ages. And so this was one of the ways that we wanted to engage with youth. And this component, this curriculum includes a practical component. So if you have the ability to either set up a farm stand, or if you have a growing space, this farm stand curriculum does not have to stay as a theory, as just a theory or a hypothetical. It's something that you can actually do. And we're always actively training folks to run their own farm stands. So this curriculum empowers school communities to take a meaningful look at our food system, to evaluate the growing capacity at their individual schools, and it examines the model that Grow NYC has used for over 50 years to support food access in New York City. It allows your school to reach beyond the perimeter of your school garden onto the plates and communities in your communities, while allowing your students to learn real-world business skills. So why farm stand business? We think that this curriculum is going to inspire school gardeners to grow at production. So for those who have been growing mostly to provide for cooking demonstrations or for kids to be eating and trying things, this is an opportunity for you to expound on that. It's an opportunity to even have a hybrid model where you could have some of your produce coming from the garden and some of your produce coming from a wholesaler like Grow NYC that sells local produce, right? It's also a way for you to open up your gardens to your community, so you don't only have to restrict and limit the food just to the folks within your schools. You can open it up to your surrounding communities, especially folks whose schools are in high need and low resource areas. Successful farm stands help to address food access in underserved communities. They're fairly easy to run, they're fairly affordable to run, and they also provide a lot of variety when you compare them to other food access initiatives. We also, in this curriculum, wanted to highlight the inequity within our urban food system. There's definitely not equal access to food for everybody in the city that we live in, as well as in the state that we live in. We wanted to show the youth and teens examples of advocacy and grassroots organizations that are currently transforming New York City's food landscape. We didn't want this just to be a way of introducing the inequity without providing either solutions, but also folks who are already doing work that your students can build on. The curriculum also offers better understanding for the current food system in New York City. It's a great way to introduce your teenagers, your high schoolers to what our food system that we exist in. We also talk a little bit about the food system in the Northeast part of the US. It also helps students to prepare for careers in agriculture, especially folks who are able to have this farm stand model on their school location. That's a good way for youth to learn about having jobs, having to participate in the professional space, having to have professional behavior, also learning about accounting and business skills and communication skills. Those are all things that they're able to practice through using this curriculum. And as I said, that we were reaching out, essentially all our resources to date were mostly reaching out for K through, excuse me, sorry, I'm in the office, so there's like a lot of background noise. But all of our resources to date were essentially looking at K through about, I would say, Sophia, maybe 8. Oh, not 8 even, maybe 6,
Yeah,
6 or 7. That's where most of our resources were focusing on, and we wanted to fill a gap in not just within our organization, but also just a gap in teen education around food and food justice and advocacy education. This curriculum is very relevant and applicable. We use a lot of real world examples. We use a lot of organizations that currently exist and are doing work. And we're hoping it's as realistic and as applicable to your communities as well. Okay. So just an overview of the curriculum. The curriculum is centered on creating real or hypothetical food access business. As I said, if you have the ability, the space, and the funding to actually run a farm stand business, it helps to just really bring home the curriculum. It makes it very practical, but also you can still do that even if you don't have room. You can still have a hypothetical, or you can have a one-day farm stand too, right? There are different ways to apply this. We try to make this curriculum as flexible as possible. All of the things that we're suggesting are all just suggestions, and we want you to take the template that we've created and make it as relevant to your groups, to your community as possible. And that's also another way to bring in the youth. You can have them actually suggest what makes most sense for their communities. If there are things in there that don't make sense for your communities, feel free to change them out to play around with them. The food access business they create should be based on the garden or farm that you have on your school campus. So as I said, make it as applicable as possible. And, ultimately, our hope is that you can take this curriculum and use it to build a business, but also to increase food access, as we said, that there is an equal access to food in all of our communities. And we want to make sure as an organization, but I assume as folks who are here today and as your students who are interested in food education and food justice, that they want to make sure that the people around them also have access to really good food and food that's grown from very close to them, and food that thinks about the environment and sustainability and the longevity of us and our communities, right? So again, we suggested you can either grow the food in your school garden. You can distribute food that's grown locally. You can run a farm stand or like a CSA, that's community supported agriculture, or creating a food box. So again, make it as flexible as possible.
Great. So now we'll talk about a little bit more of the details of what the curriculum looks like before we actually get to showing you the curriculum and all the resources that we've made and provided for you all. So Unit 1 is getting to know the local food system, and Unit 1 has the most lessons. It has 8 lessons. Some of these include agricultural science. We talk about things like the local food system and climate change, as well as other lessons that we'll be getting into. We have Unit 2, which is Introduction to Business, and this really goes through business basics, things like marketing, counter marketing, and it's business in relation to food and food systems and food businesses, obviously, because that's what this curriculum is about. But I think that the Introduction to Business unit is really great for all students, especially ones that might not be getting this education in any other of their high school classes. And it's super applicable outside of food systems and food businesses as well. And then Unit 3 is a project guide. So this is really the culmination of the whole project of the different units. Everything in this curriculum is building upon one another. So for example, at the end of the very first lesson, we make an asset map of assets in your local community, and looking at gaps in your local food system. And then throughout the curriculum, it's building upon one another to get to the project guide when you apply this learned knowledge to launch the food access business at your school. So like we said, it's a curriculum that I think is really unique among curriculum that exist, especially for students in New York, because it is specifically tailored to New York City's local food system. So we include a lot of history and culture, as well as all of the business aspects and the project guide. So like we've said, there are 2 main options you can choose from to facilitate this project. We have option number 1, which is setting up a real food access business with the intent of growing and selling produce. And we have option 2, which is setting up a hypothetical food access business with no plan to grow or sell produce. And although the curriculum is tailored more towards option 1, this is also something you can work towards as a school or as a community. Maybe the first year or the first few years that you teach this curriculum, you're working with option 2. Maybe your school is still in the process of getting a school garden back. We know that as someone who works on the school gardens team, I know that, during COVID, many school gardens were basically decimated and had to start over from scratch. So if you don't feel like this year or this semester is the time to set up that real food access business, I wouldn't be discouraged. I would still take a good look at the curriculum and see what you can do and what you can work with.
I also think this is an opportunity for you to be creative too. I think, and we would love to hear if you don't choose option 1 and choose option 2, what a hypothetical food access business would look like. And if maybe you can have like a school presentation and invite everybody else into the conversation, and have like a little farm stand set up just for the day. And we also recommend, we do have a wholesale program that does distribute local produce. So if you do choose option 1, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. I'm going to put our email in here. We can help connect you to the folks who can get you food at a wholesale price that you can sell at your farm stand.
Yeah, I also do think that if you're really passionate about this work, using option 2 to get to option 1 is a great way to maybe show people at your school, administrators, what this work is and how important it is, and that students are really invested in it as well.
Yeah, also a good launching pad for funding. You could show in the first year, this is what you did in theory, and this is what you'd want to do in practice.
Exactly.
Okay. So just a little more detail about the lesson. So we've told you what the overarching themes are, and we want to go into a little bit more detail. And later on, Sophia is actually going to walk you through our website so you can see where the curriculum is and what the breakdown looks like. So in lesson one, we're going to be talking about, lesson one talks about food systems, and we'll go through like the different steps in the food system and also introduce key concepts that are going to be essential for the next few topics. In lesson two, we'll introduce them to farming. We'll talk about the history of farming and the different types of farming. And we also introduce different types of farming, like organic farming versus small scale and industrial farming. In lesson three, that's our ag science lesson, and we'll talk about how food is grown and what exactly is needed to grow food. Lesson four introduces land usage. That's where we talk a lot about the just land in this country, the history behind land and farming in this country. And we also talk about alternatives to the way food is grown from the way we mostly know it in especially like large industrial farms. So there's a lot of history and also a lot of really good resources for folks who don't know about the connections between racism and farming.
And we have, these are all lessons still in Unit 1. So Lesson 5 talks about food access. And this we touch on in many of our lessons, actually, but then it's such an important concept to this curriculum and especially to the food access businesses that we have the whole lesson on food access. We talk about what it is and how it varies by neighborhood in New York City specifically. So this one is super interesting. There's a lot of interactive maps and things that your students can look at and hopefully relate to their own lives. And we also talk about the history of food markets in New York City and how that's impacted food access from the 1600s through now, and going forward, what that could look like. Lesson 6 is food sovereignty and agroecology. So this is introducing these topics. We specifically talk about things like food forests, as well as indigenous food gardens, peasant farming. And this is a history and cultural lesson that really zooms out from just New York City and has more of a global lens. Lesson 7 is food, farming, and racial justice. So this is a amazing history lesson. It really could be taught as a whole week. There's lots of information here about contributions that Africans have made to farming from ancient Egypt all the way through today with modern urban agriculture.
Yeah.
And we talk about people like George Washington Carver, Fannie Lou Hamer, and just lots of different contributions. Tutu, do you want to add something?
I do. We actually got we piloted this project, this curriculum in 2 schools, and we had two different schools teaching it, and they gave us some feedback on it. So the feedback we got for lesson 7 is that it was pretty dense. And so we've actually created a summary of lesson 7 that is included in the curriculum. But as Sophia said, if you have the time to go into the history, it's really helpful. But, if you're also looking for a too long didn't read, we have that in there as well.
Yep. And then lesson 8, which is the last lesson in this unit, is food, farming, and climate change. So we get into the science of climate change, its impact on New York City, just ecologically, and also specifically on food systems, and then talking about ways that farmers are responding to climate change. As probably a lot of us know, climate change is drastically impacting the food industry and specifically farmers. So talking about the many creative ways that people working with food are dealing with climate change. And then lessons 9 through 12 are all unit 2. So this is introduction to business. We start off with business basics. This talks about different business models, pros and cons of business models, and these are specifically food businesses. So we're talking about restaurants, pop-ups, food trucks, catering companies, lots of different types of food businesses. And we discussed the labor of farming and the business of farming. So, covering topics such as livable wages, minimum wage, how this specifically is relevant to the farming industry, and a little bit of history too on how, farm workers have been mistreated for a lot of the history of farming, especially in this country. Then we have lesson 10, which is farm business finance. So we talk about different organizational structures used by farm businesses. Your students will learn about nonprofit organization status, LLC. We talk about how to pay farm startup costs and why they are what they are, as well as pricing and preparing inventory. Lesson 11 is filling gaps in your community. So how to identify your target audience and build community relations, which anyone who works for a business or has run a business will know is super important. And just kind of getting those concepts out to your students, as well as lesson 12, facing the public, types of marketing strategies, how farms apply marketing strategies. Here we talk about things like counter marketing, which is really interesting and relevant in food marketing. And all of these lessons, like I said, are geared towards food and food businesses, but they're really important topics that are relevant to all different types of businesses, and your students can take with them to whatever they end up doing.
I'm going to take a pause here just to respond to some of the questions in the chat. And Kier says, what can the money generated from the farm stand go towards? Does it have to go back to Grow NYC? So no, it doesn't have to go to Grow NYC. We're a nonprofit, and so we actually can't take any profit. So essentially, and I think we talk a little bit about this, when you're putting together your budget for the farm stand, you're budgeting out how much you're going to spend on purchasing food, right? So and this is what we do here at Grow NYC. So we put a very minimal markup just in order to cover things like equipment and staff time. And you're free to take the budgets that we've put in the curriculum and use them and make them applicable for where you're at, being thoughtful around what the economic reality is around you. So if you do have any money that is created from that can go into like buying seeds for the next year. It could go into building up your garden, and also really whatever you all decide. If you want to provide stipends for the youth who have been part of this, that's also a possibility. So yeah, we do not want any proceeds. We have got granting. We've got a grant and funding to build this curriculum. We want to make sure, we wanted to share this knowledge, and essentially our goal is to increase food access. So however that happens, that's what we're here to support. But thanks for that question, Kier. And Kara said, was this designed to be a year-long curriculum? So yes, when we designed this, we were thinking about it being a year-long curriculum, because then you have the colder months to teach, the colder months to plan for if you're growing this, and then in the warmer months to start planting and to be able to have something by the time summer rolls around. But also, we've talked a lot about flexibility, and you'll hear that in all of our conversations. We recognize that some of you might not be teaching this as a main subject, and you might want to introduce some of these topics to your class. We have designed the curriculum such that the lessons are standalone to a certain point. Some of them you can just take them and teach them, and we've had teachers do that and been really successful. And I myself have taken, I think it was lesson 6, and just taught on that. So it was, in our minds, we designed it to be as flexible as possible, because we recognize that teachers have different needs and schools have different needs. So if you want to take one lesson and teach that's totally fine. If you want to teach the entire curriculum, we just encourage you to be thoughtful about like the weather and the climate, so that if you're growing something, if you're selling something, it's within the harvest season. And then I'll answer Paula's question. So if my farm stand program is currently supplementing produce grown from our market, are you saying if we're part of your program, we don't have to pay for the produce? Currently we pay? And have to purchase, yeah. So no, Paula, we're saying you still have to pay the minimum. So we sell the food to you at the cost price at the wholesale price, not at the cost price, because we also have to make a little bit of a I'm just saying that we don't make a huge profit like we would if we were a private organization. You still have to pay for the food because we have to pay farmers. I once heard someone say free food. Wait, I'm going to misquote her and I won't. But essentially, if you're not paying us, there's an injustice somewhere to the farmers who we're getting food from. So there is money involved in getting food from us, but and you do have to meet a minimum of 250. But you can also potentially talk to schools within your neighborhood and maybe partner and they can deliver at one place. Great, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Paula. Great, and feel free to keep asking questions. So we'll talk a little bit about facilitation guide and tips. And these are just things we picked up as we were either teaching the lessons or as we got feedback from teachers. We encourage you to understand the importance and relevance of the lesson and activity. So a lot of you are going to be addressing real life issues, and some of you might be operating from a hypothetical standpoint. Some folks might be also operating from lived experiences, especially the lessons where we talk about food access and we talk about lack of access, so we talk about racism and the history behind farming. It's not pretty, it's hard, and allow for just breaths and allow for breaks, allow that it might be also really hard topics for your students to be introduced to for the first time. So we want to make sure that we preface that and say that there are some of these lessons that are a lot harder to take in than others, and just work that into your curriculum, allowing for just authentic conversations and for also just folks to be able to step away when if it does become too much. We modeled what community agreements are, and we encourage you to craft them for your group. This just really helps to build cohesiveness. It helps folks to feel like they understand how they're going to be engaging with one another, how they're going to be engaging with you. So definitely, we've found that to be really helpful as we're working with you, so that they can feel like they have some ownership over what they're doing. And number 3, we encourage you to uplift students' lived experiences. As we said, you're going to be talking about a lot of things that folks are currently living through or have lived through or are really close to. So if there are moments where where your students want to share their lived experiences, allow for that. And also explore the intersectionality of topics. So there's a lot of things that are connected to each other. There are a lot of through lines in all of these conversations. You'll begin to notice that once you start teaching. Allow your students to be able to explore that, to be able to explore how Black women specifically were, put at a disadvantage. How, folks of color, also all the struggles that they were facing. And as we said I think we're always going to say this, adapt the curriculum. What we have is a template. We want you to take it and run with it. Even you'll see we've created PowerPoint presentations. Again, as a guide, as a template, we wanted to take them and run with them. We wanted to create a curriculum that was as easy that had just, like a wide range of folks. So if folks just only had a very short amount of time and a very short amount of ability to create anything, the curriculum is ready for you to go. But if there are folks who have a lot of time to think through this and have a year out to plan, this is also something that you can do. You can adapt it and make it more relatable. Also, you can, like Sophia said, if you're starting to teach this as a theoretical concept in 1 year and hoping to grow into a practical concept or a real life concept, you can use feedback from students to tweak and tailor your curriculum. And then finally, when we were thinking through this, we were thinking that you all would be working as an entire class, and that this whole project would include your whole class, so that you're involved, so that everybody can be on the same page with what everyone else is doing, but also encourage a lot of teamwork and group work. But if you happen to be in a class that's too large and it's not possible to run this curriculum as one class, feel free to split it, and just make sure that each group is communicating enough to ensure that they're all on the same page and that they're all also sharing all the lessons that they're learning. And next is a picture of some of the youth who've gone through our Farmstand curriculum, and they did that by attending weekly workshops, but they have also worked at various Farmstand sites all over New York City. And that was us at a trip to our teaching garden on Governance Island. And I'll take a pause just to see what Kara is saying. Just thinking out loud that some schools may want to do a mini farm stand, that's right, or a farm cart with food grown in our hydroponic systems. Yes, this can continue through the winter months for schools where the goals are more CTE oriented. That's true. Thank you so much, Kara, for uplifting that. That's very true. Yeah, these are the kind of things we want to see, and I think we've included a feedback form on the curriculum. So if you take this curriculum and implement it and come up with ideas, please let us know so we can share with other folks.
So next we're going to explore the curriculum page. So this was relatively recently published. So if you feel like the whole Grow NYC distance learning page and you haven't seen this yet, that would be why. So everyone can see my screen, correct? Tutu, give me a thumbs up. You can see it?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So we'll put the link in the chat, but we're at grownycdistancelearning.org/Farmstand Business Curriculum. So here is our page. We have an introduction with basically what we've gone over in this presentation. Tomorrow we will actually be adding this very orientation to the top of this page. So if you missed some of it, this is the page where you'll look to see this very orientation. So here we have the curriculum. So we have Unit 1, Unit 2, and Unit 3. And then down here we have all of the accompanying PowerPoints for lessons 1 through 12. So firstly, I'll walk you through Unit 1. So when you click on it, you get taken to our PDF document, and from here you can download it. I would do that clicking here, but I'll just walk you through it on the online version. So we have our fall 2022 Farmstand Business Curriculum. And like I said, this is Unit 1. And so here we have the table of contents. And here's Lesson 1, Food System, Introduction to Farming, Agricultural Science. And under each of the lesson titles, we have all of the subheadings. And this table of contents is clickable. So we click on Lesson 1 here, and it takes us down to Lesson 1, Food Systems. And the things I want to highlight in this are that we have our objective. The objective for Lesson 1 is, in this lesson, the students will learn about some of the nuances of food systems at varying scales while being introduced to Grow NYC. Students will be asked to break down the local food system surrounding their school to identify real-world stakeholders in their community. We have vocabulary words that are important to highlight throughout this lesson. Some of the words we're discussing here: consumption, distribution, food access, food security, food system, etc. And then in the background information section, this is really the bulk of each lesson. We have our topic questions in bold and italicized. This section, we discuss what is a food system. We include figures, and all of these figures are clickable as well if you need to or want to know the source or find out more information. That would take you to where we found that figure. We have what happens at each step of the food system. So here we discuss food production, processing, distribution, retail and market, and consumption. what is food security? How does New York City's food system work? And I'm really just kind of, going through this relatively quickly, but you'll be able to spend as much time with this as you want. And then each of the lessons has a procedure as well. So this is the element of the lesson that then will build upon each other to end up with the project guide and end up with your actual food access business. So in this procedure, the students will be broken up into small groups. They will be making a list of food stakeholders in their school community. And like we've said, everything is really community oriented. People are supposed to be thinking about what's going on really in the city around them and specifically in their own community.
And just to add, Sophia, we didn't, if you look at the PowerPoint presentations, it doesn't include the extensions or the procedure because we thought that would be dependent on the teacher and the class and what how you're going to present this curriculum or implement it. So yeah, this is like the practical part of it. Now that they've learned all of this history behind it or the background knowledge, how can they take that and make that practical?
Yep. And then we have the extension, like we mentioned, it's just basically extra if you want to assign it as homework or just have more to do in your class, we have our extension. And then some of the lessons have worksheets. This one does a food system exploration worksheet. And that's lesson 1. And then I will show you our accompanying PowerPoint. So that was lesson 1 in unit 1. We have, then if you click down here, it takes you to a Google Slides presentation. And all of this is free also on our website. And here we have Farmstand Business Curriculum, Lesson 1, Food Systems. Like we said, everything is flexible. You don't have to use it or you don't have to use all of it, but it can be used as a great jumping off point.
And we also tried to mix the media and we tried to include videos as well that were explaining specific points on different slides just to, create diversity in the experience too.
Yep. So in the lesson outline, we include all of the different questions that are included in the background information. And then we go through those questions.
Yeah. Sophia, I wonder if you want to run through unit 3, so that because we're running out of time and I want to make sure we have some question. Give time for questions.
Yeah. So I can click over to unit 3, and this is definitely the shortest unit. But this is the project guide for creating a food access business. So congratulations, you've made it to the project phase. And this is, supposed to be done after unit 1 and unit 2. But this is where we have our steps, which include defining the project. And we have all of these kind of guiding questions for you and your students to go over. And once you've, done a lot of the other parts of the curriculum, a lot of this will seem really seamlessly integrated.
And some of the procedures actually have you doing some of this work already. So by the time you get to this point, you would have done a lot of some of this initial work too. And essentially, this should get you to the point where you're thinking about whether you're going to run your hypothetical or your real life food access. And we've also included a video that shows that we have that. So we've included trainings on how to set up a farm stand, and that's based on Grow NYC's farm stand model. A lot of what we based this off of is our organization's food access initiative models. So we included a budget, we included inventory of thinking through like equipment that you might need and accounting that you might need in order to make sure that your money is balanced and that you're keeping an eye on and tracking your what you're making and what's going out.
Yeah. So if even the other parts of the curriculum seem still kind of too hypothetical, or like, how am I actually going to make this food access
Mhm.
business? We also include lots of different links and resources in here.
Yeah.
For example, right here, create a mission statement, use this resource to craft a mission statement for your business.
Mhm.
So really getting into the nitty gritty and the details of how to make a viable business.
Yeah. All right. I think we should pause here
Yeah.
to ask if folks have more questions that they want to voice by themselves or to put in the chat. And also thank you for listening to us and for taking an interest in this curriculum. Okay, I'm checking to see, making sure I didn't miss anything. Great. Thank you, Sarah. You're welcome. Thank you for coming and listening to us. And okay. Any thoughts on support from market insurance? That is a great question. I do not have an answer for that. But we can find an answer for you.
Mm-hmm.
I can talk to my colleagues and okay, support. That's a good question. We can ask folks who've in the community who are running these programs what sort of insurance they're using. Great, thanks, Paula. We'll make sure that that gets sent out to all the attendees. Okay, insurance. All right. So oh,
Very
Maria, thank you.
excited to bring this to fruition, Maria.
Me
We are
too.
very excited for everyone,
Yeah.
bring this to fruition.
Yeah, I guess unless anyone has questions, feel free to let us know. But I think what we're going to say is that we are available for any kind of support as you implement this, as you think about implementing this. I'll put the email again. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We will try and get you in touch with any kind of support or resources that you need to make this happen. Okay, where and who can we contact about getting wholesale produce to supplement what we're growing? Hannah, if you reach out to me, I'm going to put my nyc.org. If you reach out to me, I can connect you anybody. If you're interested in getting wholesale produce to supplement your farm stands, if you reach out to me, I can connect you with our wholesale team. It's just easier for me to connect you to them because you get a faster response than if you cold call them or cold email them. Great. Oh, okay. I'll read this out. Thoughts on networking opportunities on connecting to community organizations such as senior centers, WIC centers, and other CBOs. That's a great idea. Some of the folks that we train to run farm stands and food boxes are senior centers, WIC centers, and other CBOs, and they're well placed for running something like this. That's actually a pretty good idea. Maybe your students and these centers can collaborate with one another, especially senior centers. I can imagine an intergenerational collaboration would be great, but also these different centers might have some kind of funding that they can offer and can help support the farm stand, but also folks who have WIC and who are older adults every summer receive farmers market nutrition checks, and your farm stands, if FMNP coupons, correct, they can use those coupons at your farm stand. So that's actually a really great idea.
Paula, just out of curiosity, which school are you at? I'm not sure if you mentioned it earlier. Sounds like, you're
Hi,
really.
let me start my video.
Hi.
Hi, I'm at
Hi.
811X. We're a District 75
Nice.
special education school, but we have been running a farm stand for a few years now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been going really great. It was
Nice.
going really great. COVID, put a pause on things, and we're slowly restarting, and we almost feel like we have to start all over again. And that's a little challenging, but
Mhm.
we, are connected to the Department of Agriculture.
Okay,
We are able to accept the
nice.
FM,
NP,
FMNP checks,
yeah.
senior, what they used to call senior bucks,
Mm-hmm.
and things like that, health bucks. We work
Yes.
with the New York, the Health and Mental Hospital, the Department of
What I
Health
meant. Uh-huh.
really supported us a lot in
Nice.
giving us access to health bucks and things of that nature. So now we're really trying to work on drawing more traffic again to our farm stand. We have a
Okay.
great school garden, but we
Nice.
do supplement with Green Market, Grow
Uh-huh.
NYC.
Mm-hmm.
And that, it's a really great partnership, but we're just trying to see how we can sort of not revamp, but just revitalize what has been
Yeah.
a great program at our school.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if I think there's a lesson there that talks about what outreach, community outreach looks like, and how to let people know that you're there, invite people into your space. But also the good thing about technology is that there are all these news email blasts. So,
Right. We've been
you know,
using social media, Instagram,
yeah.
and things like that to let people know about our
Exactly.
market.
I mean,
Right.
send it to us. We can post it in our newsletters that we send to schools, also send to our partners. But that's exciting. Congratulations, Paula.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, we'll send them to customers. And I also want to uplift what Kier is saying. Kier would love to collaborate and is already doing a food justice curriculum and hydroponics work, and has put their email in the chat. Any other questions, folks, before we sign off? We are going to host another presentation like this. So if you, in the spring, is that correct,
Well,
Sophia?
in January.
In January.
Mhm.
So if you know anyone else who might benefit from this, who might be interested but wasn't able to make it, we will host this workshop again. But as Sophia said, it will be available on our website, and we'll also send a link to all the attendees as well, and include any resources that we mentioned. Great. All right, I guess we'll dismiss. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate your time. We also are excited to hear what you're learning from having these conversations. Please fill out the feedback or just reach out to us directly. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good
Have a nice
evening.
night.
Yeah.